Business Plan Basics. Prepared for and presented at the 2018 Square One Entrepreneurship Training Program. Square One is a program of the Center for Emerging Technologies. CET is an affiliate of the Cortex Innovation Community. Square One is funded in part by the Missouri Technology Corporation.
My name is Gabriela Ramirez-Arellano. I'm actually the business counselor at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, but I'm also the business director for the BASA Foundation. So if you have not heard about the BASA Foundation, we have a $1,000 grant that we give out to 10 finalists twice a year. Applications will be opening up at the end of December for next year. So you might want to keep an eye out for that. A part of your winning, besides the $1,000 for your startup, is a 10-week also learning series where we talk about many of the similar things that you have talked about here. The other great value of that is that the presenters will also give you one-on-one time with you. So if an accountant comes to present to you about accounting, you can call that accountant after the session and say, hey, I need help getting my QuickBooks set up, or I have questions about this 990, or I'm a non-for-profit, or I want to be a nonprofit. How do I fill out that paperwork? So I work very closely with the finalists on that. And I'm also an entrepreneur. I own a Mexican restaurant out in O'Fallon, Missouri. And the subject...
Go early and often.
Oh. So the subject of business planning is not always something that as entrepreneurs we want to do. But today I want to talk to you about a little bit about why businesses succeed, why they fail, the dreaded, I will say, business plan, by why it needs to be your best friend, and then strengths and weakness, opportunities and threats through the SWOT analysis. So by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Essentially, the business plan is your preparation to succeed. So why do businesses succeed? Any thoughts?
Good plan.
Good plan, okay. What else? Why do businesses succeed?
They execute on the plan well.
They execute well. Anything else?
Their ability to pivot.
Perfect. So I also put some other things, right? So all the things that you mentioned are part of that, but then you also want to have the competitive dimensions, which are price, quality, convenience, service, superior marketing, and hard work. These are all at some point things that you will touch on in your business plan, maybe once and maybe twice. It's very easy to say, I don't feel like doing a business plan, or I know what I'm doing, but remember that the business plan can be the difference between failure and success. So what about some reasons why businesses fail? Overspending. What else?
Selling something people don't want.
Correct. So also lack of experience, right? What happens with a lot of startups? They don't necessarily grow. What about capital? So I see Diego in the back. He's going to talk to you guys about microlending in a little while. But capital is needed for you to grow. Location. I know Mark does a lot of work around buildings and location and all. What's going to be the best place for your business to have a brick and mortar? But also inventory management. I mean, in my case as a restaurant, I need to be very careful that the food that I have is just enough to service the people that come to eat. Otherwise, all of that could go to waste, right? So the same thing can happen with your own businesses. If you have a retail store, you order extra larges or sizes small, right? What's going to be the way that you're going to keep track of your inventory? And then overinvestment in fixed assets. So sometimes as small businesses, and I've seen this happen, we get so excited about starting a business that we invest in things that we don't necessarily need in the beginning. So we need to be very careful about that. One example I had with an entrepreneur was that they needed a whole POS system because they were going to open a restaurant. So they made a $10,000 investment on a POS system without really realizing the additional costs that were going to be associated with that on a monthly basis, the fact that they had to pay for updates. Anytime the system went down, they would have to pay for that. So really being very strategic about the initial investments that you make. And then credit arrangement and management. So whose credit does your business rely on when you first start? Yours. So if you haven't done it already, and I know this is not a financial literacy class, but if you haven't done it already, get your credit looked at. Justine Peterson is an awesome organization that you can go to, talk to them about your credit, or even just have them pull it to see if there's anything that's incorrect on there. Because at the beginning, your credit, your personal credit, will be your business credit. So if you are trying to set yourself up for long-term access to capital, when you go see Diego or any of the banks, they're going to want to see what does your credit look like. So start working on that now, or at least start realizing where you are today, so that when you get there, you're going to be in the best position. And then also, along with credit, is personal use of funds, making sure that you do truly separate your business account from your personal account, right? So bank account, that you're making the expenses and you're able to say, yes, this is specifically for my business. And then unexpected growth. So I see this a lot. Also, unexpected growth where you don't realize. My personal example, so I have a Mexican restaurant. My daughter's a vegan. She kept saying, Mom, you need to have a vegan menu because there are no Mexican restaurants that sell vegan food. Initially, we're like, oh, I don't know if anybody will buy it. There's not a big vegan population in O'Fallon, Missouri. So we started with Mondays was vegan night. And we were selling out of the food so fast because it was a totally different take on a traditional vegan. It wasn't tofu. It wasn't like fake meat. It was traditional Mexican recipes. They just didn't have meat in it, which the culture and the cuisine lends itself to. But we weren't prepared for the growth of that and how we were going to be able to support that. So we ended up having to revisit what we were trying to do and re-look at who our suppliers were, because they were no longer able to provide us the items that we needed when we needed them. So, the business plan purpose. At the end of the day, it's an action plan. It's your roadmap for your business. But it's also a sales tool, because when you go to someone and you share your business plan with them, it's going to allow them to see all and read and think through all those things that you keep saying, I have it right here. Because we all have it right here, right? We have an idea of what we want our business to be like. We have an idea, but we haven't gone from the conceptual to the actual and the tangible of how we're going to carry out those things. So it's really important to do so. And then it's also your sales tool, because when you go to the bank, they're going to be able to say, yes, this person is on track. They've done the research. They have a good idea what their projections will be, not just for income, but also for expenses. So the business plan, what is it? At the end of the day, it's a written document that describes your status as well as your needs and your projections. However, we're not always clear on why we need it or that we want to do it. So it's really important that even if you don't want to do it, that you just start with one section at a time. Go through it, answer the questions, really think through it. Because like I said, sometimes we're so in love with our idea, we just can't figure out why nobody likes it, why nobody else wants it. And I know Christy mentioned that some of you have already vetted your ideas. That's great. Sometimes the business plan is that process of trying to figure out, is this really going to make sense? Am I going to really make money? You know, is there really room in the market for my business? So it'll help you get a clear picture of what the venture is and how you're going to go about doing what you set out to do. It also helps you test the viability of your business. You can let someone read it and give you feedback. Does this make sense to you? If not, what do you think I should think about or add to it? So, I'm going to randomly ask you some of these. So let's all read through it. So what's your business and what's the niche or role in the marketplace? What need does it address? Who wants to give me an example that they've already thought through before I call on you? Yes.
My business is an addiction recovery application, and the niche or role that it fits within the market is basically a gap in between what happens when you leave the 27-day or 21-day or however many day plan or program. Basically, once you leave an addiction facility, what happens afterwards is the niche that I fill.
Okay, so what's the need that it addresses?
The need that it addresses is support, having access to a support system.
Okay, perfect. What about somebody else? Who are your customers and why will they buy from you and not your competitors? Alida? Alidra?
That's a good question. So, my customers are primarily like millennial, liberal-leaning, socially conscious individuals who want to purchase products that, one, are manufactured ethically, and also products that allow them to demonstrate their beliefs in regard to social issues, like the shirts that say different things and stuff like
That's a lot.
that. Yeah.
So why would they come to you and not a competitor?
Well, we, all of our apparel and items, so even though you could get them from other people, they are sweatshop free. So if you like want to display this message of being socially conscious and liberal leaning or whatever, you should also think about how these products were manufactured, because a lot of the products that competitors are selling are not made in a socially just way.
Okay, perfect. And then how will you operate your business and who will do what? What about you, Christy? Or does anybody else does anybody have a partner in their venture? You do?
She lives back in Atlanta, so we're currently trying to operate the business. There's 4 of us total, so we handle a lot of the design together, and then she handles the web development, but she also has another job that has to do with web development, so I feel much more comfortable letting her do those things and figure out the data stuff. So we just delegate roles, and especially because we live in 2 different places, having those well defined is kind of working, but it'd be much better to be in person, hashing out a lot of this stuff at once.
Right. So this is one clear example of why it's so important to have that in your written plan, so that Christy knows that she's responsible for these 5 things, and her second business partner knows that they're responsible for these other 7 things, and then maybe the third one is in charge of financials, and the fourth one in charge of marketing. What usually happens when you first start out, especially when you're in a partnership, is everybody just kind of naturally fits the role that they're trained to do, that they have the skill set for. But when the stuff hits, what do you call it?
Proverbial fan.
Yeah. When the stuff hits, if there's no set plan for who's going to do what, then guess what? The likelihood that something that needs to get done falls between the cracks is really high. Not only that, but when you talk about the roles of the people, not even to mention the ownership, right? So what percentage, so you guys, there's 4 partners. Does that automatically mean that 25% of profit and loss is going to be divided equally? No. But if you don't have anything in writing, then what happens? A lot of the times I find that as long as there's no money, everything's cozy, right? We're all just happy. But that first dollar or that first penny gets in and everybody's trying to figure out, well, I did most of the work. Well, I was the face person. I should get the most of the money. So how will you divide that dollar? So that's another reason why the business plan and contracts and agreements are going to be so important. And then projected financials and expected expenses. Who likes numbers here? Who's already done some of this? What are some of your projected numbers looking like, and how did you get to those?
Oh, well, I don't have anything super firm yet. I've done some kind of like test web advertising, for example. It's something I'd later like to do full time. So I have kind of an estimate, it'll cost this much, and this is what kind of exposure I get from it. It's just an example.
Okay, so you have at least a starting point, right? But the reality is you won't know until you get out there of what that will look like. So where can we do research on what other companies are doing, what expenses could be expected, and then what your projected sales would be? Anybody done any research yet?
SEC.gov, is that the Security and Trades Commission website?
Okay, that's an option.
Researching public companies.
Anybody else?
You could go to a librarian.
Yes, that's my favorite one. So I'll tell you guys in a little while, but I have a really good friend at the St. Peter's Library that loves to do research. So he taught me how to do it, but he really loves it so much that I usually just send him an email and say, hey Trevor, can you tell me what's going on in this zip code? Or what is the catering spend in the metro region by zip code? So that was really important to me because I needed to know, you know, is O'Fallon really going to be the place where I can count on, I don't know, $50,000 worth of catering a year? Or do I need to be in another zip code? So research is going to be really important for you to project your financials and also your expenses. I mean, when we opened the restaurant, we knew we had to allow for the building, the rent, utilities, but we weren't prepared for $1 million insurance policy that the landlord required. We weren't prepared for some additional costs, like the liquor license. I'm thinking you get a liquor license, right? That's from one entity. Well, no, you have to get a liquor license from the city, the county, the state, and somebody else. And it's not just a liquor license in general that will let me serve alcohol to everybody. I have to get a liquor license that lets me sell beer and alcohol during the week, and a separate license to sell alcohol during the weekend. So research is going to be monumental for you to understand what are those kind of expenses, right? So research other businesses like yours. Now that we have internet, this is not as complicated as it used to be, but you do need to know where to go to get this information. And then, what are some of the goals that you have and why are they realistic? As an example, like I said, my daughter's a vegan, so she thought that if the vegan food worked at the restaurant, she should just start a truck. And so she projected that because she knows all her friends are vegan, so everybody's almost vegan in her mind. So she projected that she would probably sell $50,000 a month if she did a truck. I don't think that that's realistic, but I don't know what research that she looked at. But when I looked at her business plan, that was one of the first things I pointed out. How are you coming to this number? How did you conclude that your goal will be $50,000 a month in a truck when you don't have a standard location? Are you going to have permission to set up your truck at any location? How are you even looking to see what locations are open and available? So a lot of stuff that we take for granted is going to really be important that you include in your business plan. A business plan is also a reflection of you. What are the things that you're passionate and committed to? Like with yours. I imagine that your business got started because of your own convictions. So the business plan is also a reflection of you. And then sometimes the main benefit of the plan is just to realize, is this going to work? Does this make any sense? But in my opinion, the real value of preparing the plan is the process of doing so. Another example, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce last year launched what we called Mercado de Ideas, which was like a Shark Tank type of initiative where we wanted our members to compete for $235,000. Initially, we had 15 people that applied. As soon as we told them that they needed a business plan, we only had 7. So just because the fear of doing the business plan scared them off. At the end of the day, we had 5 people pitch to the sharks. We actually held it in this room. And the reality was that those 5 people, nobody asked for any money. But the process that they had gone through to do the business plan, to do the research, allowed them to grow their business, allowed them to get to their next step. And your next step might be different than my next step. But the process of going through, does this really make sense? Am I doing this right? Who do I need to talk to that's already in the business? I'm sure you all have already talked about research and talking to other people with similar businesses, or maybe not similar businesses, because then you learn what other people are doing as far as innovation. But that process, in fact, we're going to present to the board this weekend, and one of the highlights of our presentation was that Yes, nobody got any money from that 200 and something thousand dollars, but the 5 businesses that pitched are in a totally different position in their business in 3 months after the pitch competition was happened. So that process is so valuable. So taking the time to build a business plan does not guarantee your success, but it does increase your chances of success. And that doesn't even go into the fact that when you go to finance, whether it's a bank or a microloan, they're going to want to see that you've thought this all through. So the business plan, again, is so important. But it does serve as a roadmap to also help you guide. If you start taking your business in a direction that is no longer in line with your original mission, that's when you can pivot. I think somebody mentioned that point. Was it you, Christy? That the business plan allows you to pivot. I mean, how many times people start a business and they think it's going to go one way, and then they realize, well, that's not really the direction I want to go, especially when you have partners. It's going to be really important that as you go through this map, that you realize, like, oh, I don't want to go that way. I want to make sure that my business is sustainable, but only with justice, or what did you say? With social justice initiatives. So I may be able to buy, and I don't know for sure, but I may be able to buy the shirts from Guatemala or Honduras for $3 instead of $8, but I know that they were not made the way I expect them to. So I can't cut that corner. But your business plan will help you go through that. So a typical plan is 25 to 50 pages. It could be longer, it could be shorter. There's really no limit, and I always just encourage people to start the process. We always procrastinate what we don't like to do. So look at all the different sections of the plan and start with the one that makes the most sense to you, or the one you already have answers for. Every plan is going to be unique, but it'll help tell your company story, like I said, not just for you, but for investors, for other people that might be helping you with the plan. So key elements of a business plan, I'm going to just show all these. So title and table of contents, this is just to make it easier for whoever's reviewing your plan. Your executive summary, giving a brief overview of what you're doing, your business description, and then you get into the nitty-gritty. What's your industry like? Right, so for a restaurant, what's that industry like? I mean, Grubhub has come in and taken 20% of my profits. I wasn't prepared for that. Right, so you need to look at what are the trends in your industry, what's happening. Like for your business, there's a lot more consciousness around that. So there's a lot more interest. And also people are willing to pay a higher price for it because they know that I'm not just buying this shirt or this cap. I'm also supporting this women, or whatever the building is. And then the market. What's your personal market like, where you're going to be? And then putting together a plan, and then your financial projections. One thing I didn't put up there was the competitive analysis, because you want to know what other people are doing in your industry. Who's out there? Is there anybody out there? Sometimes we think, oh, I have no competition. But really, like for me, in my case, there are 7 Mexican restaurants in O'Fallon, Missouri. They're not close to each other, so they are not my direct competition. But across the street from me is a pizza place. And behind me is a Chinese place. And down the street is McDonald's and KFC and everybody else. So it's not just your direct competition that you need to be aware of. What are they doing? Again, with the, I go back to the restaurant because that's what I do, but I'm sure you can apply it to you. With Grubhub and these delivery models coming in, that put a whole new twist in the restaurant. Because now you're having all these clients that maybe wouldn't be there, that are ordering online, or that are ordering from these other agencies, and you have to figure out, does it make sense for me with my business model, because what are they charging for that delivery fee and convenience? So, have you guys seen the business model canvas before?
Yes.
So, I brought copies of the Co-Starter, which is a different brand of the model canvas. It's basically the same thing, But for me and some of the people that I work with, it does make it a little bit easier for you to start filling it out. So I brought you a copy just so that you could get started. I would use this as a springboard to your actual business plan. Go through this, answer the questions, have someone look at it. I've even done this exercise with Post-its, so that you start with the Post-its for each section, and then you review it and go back and cross out or remove the Post-its that maybe didn't apply. So at the end, you have a business model with a lot of Post-its, or draw it out on a big whiteboard, to try to really answer the questions. Because a lot of times, like I said, we think that we're answering, especially when we talk about problems and solutions. So I'm not solving a hunger problem at the Mexican restaurant. What am I solving?
Convenience.
Convenience, what else? Variety, culture, experience, for our Mexican customers, nostalgia, right? These are foods from our native country that maybe you can't get at a traditional restaurant. So what are the real solutions and problems that you're solving? Think it through, because it might not be what you think about at first. So I brought a copy of the canvas for you to start going through it as a starting point for your business plan, because it is important for you to go ahead and start the exercise. So some next steps. Look at business plan samples online. Has anybody done that already?
Yes.
What are some good sites?
I like live plan.
Live Plan?
This next one.
What else? And I think Live Plan is related to B Plans.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Live Plan is the software that allows you to create the business plan online, but bplans.com has like hundreds of sample business plans that you can look at. Detailed business plans with financial projections, competitive analysis, just to help you get started and see what you really need to have in it. And then fill out the business model canvas, like I said. Use it as a springboard to the business plan. And then also complete your SWOT analysis. Have you guys talked about that already? So a SWOT analysis talks about your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you want to look at all of that for your business, right? What are the strengths that you have or that your business has? But then what are also the weaknesses, right? For my restaurant, a strength is, well, authentic Mexican is relative, right? I think it's authentic because it's what I eat at home, but I've had people tell me they've tasted food in Oklahoma that wasn't the same, and mine is not authentic, so. So for me, I thought a strength of mine was authentic Mexican food. I thought another strength was that my husband, who is the one that makes the food, is there at the restaurant. What are some weaknesses for me? Some weaknesses for me is maybe not everybody likes authentic Mexican food, right? Some other weaknesses for us is my husband is only one person. Can he work every single day of the week at all hours? No. So we need to train the right people. Opportunities and threats for our business. Some opportunities for us would maybe be to increase our catering business. Some opportunities could be to have more events at our place. But then some obvious threats are the competition, right? You can't have Mexican food every day either, so there's that part. How do you make yourself different every single day for people? How do you differentiate yourself? So very important for you to go through that for your company, to really understand what are those strengths, what are the weaknesses, and then find out how to fill those gaps. And then I mentioned the Balsa Foundation to you all already, but we have a great tool on our website called Idea Support. So you can actually submit your idea to us, and we'll have it reviewed by a panel of like 8 to 10 local experts that will give you feedback on your idea. So make sure you take advantage of that. And then while you're there, you can also look at the entrepreneur roadmap that's there that really guides you through the whole process of establishing your business. So registering with the state, how to get an EIN, local resources for you. Really important for you to think about submitting that idea support, because feedback from other people that maybe are not in your same industry but are in the business development industry is very important. So the other things that I kind of wanted to talk about that I think are going to be important with your business plan are some of these. What's your personal commitment to your business? What motivates you? Why? What's the reason that you're starting the business? Is it, a lot of times we start a business because we felt a gap that someone didn't fill for us, so we're now starting a business, right? So I don't know about you, but I think that maybe you started the business because you couldn't find the things that you wanted, that you want to now bring so that other people can buy. I don't know enough about all your businesses to go through them all, but it is important to realize, why did you start this business? Why do you think it's important, not just to the region, but to the industry? And then, why are you passionate about the idea? The other things to think about are, do you need a job and do you like to be the boss? Because guess what? The business is your job and you are the boss. So there's not going to be anybody to tell you, hey, call the people, do the sales calls, send the emails, or did you already put together this marketing strategy? This is all going to have to be self-motivated. And that's again why the business plan is so important. Because as you're going through the process of doing your business, you can go back and say, oh, I had the idea to do this marketing strategy. Did I do that already? How will I implement it? And then also your goals. When we talk about the projections, not just financial projections, but what about reach? What about expansion? That's all part of your plan. And then the time, part of the projections will also include that. You know, am I going to be able to grow this business in 2 years? Or is it an industry where it's going to be 5 years? I do a lot of work with Mark and the restaurants, and that's always a need. Even though, as much as we want more people to start food businesses, there aren't enough commercial kitchens in the area. So that's our goal, but the reality is something else. So that means that we need to work and be more creative about how do we provide those opportunities for those people. So how will that relate to your business? Your goal may be to have a second location in the next 5 years, but what are you going to do, or what do you need to do? Who are the people you need to connect with to be able to do that? And then also, not necessarily part of your business plan unless your family will work with you, but it's important for you to think about the money and the family relationships, like I mentioned with Christy when she has 4 partners. The business plan should have a good process and a good indication of how things will be split up. Not just the money, but also the roles. And then control of your professional life. As an entrepreneur, this is your life. I mean, most of us, well, I still work full-time, but my husband runs the restaurant most of the time. But there will be a point where you hope, right, to leave what you're currently doing and run this full-time. So understanding, how do you control your own life? How do you make the most of your time? And again, some of these things are not necessarily going to be in the plan, but they are things that you need to think about, because having a startup is all encompassing. If any of you have started, sleepless nights, my husband always tells me that he left his 9 to 5 to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So really important, the plan really just reiterates and helps you stay on track. So, are your goals compatible with entrepreneurship? That's really key. Because like I tell my daughter all the time, when you're your own boss, if you don't work, guess what? You don't make any money. So there's no vacation time, there's no a lot of everything. So how does that all fit into how you want your business to function? Especially when we're talking about having employees. You know, how will you work that in for them? So, again, thank you so much for having me. I went through this kind of fast, but I feel that if you start with this model canvas that I shared with you as a springboard, that it will really help you get started. I'm always available if you need me to look at something. Here's my contact information. Like I said, I'm at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. We're not too far away from here, right off of Grand and Gravois. We'd love to have you guys come out to any of our business after hours, meet other entrepreneurs, find out what we're doing. And then also an invitation again to be a part, to check out the Boston Foundation website. We do a lot of stuff with our entrepreneurs, and if we can help in any way, we'd love to. So thank you.
Are there any questions about the business plan in general?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. I have a question actually. I'm working for a startup company, but I was working in a company who bankrupt. So I have experience why the bankrupt. It is the few things I have. They hired a person who they cannot utilize 100%. So when you utilize 50%, 25%, people sitting, so that all evil things is there, their mind. So they are hitting each other. Second is they buy something and which is not utilized, and many of the things remain unutilized, never utilized, but they bought it. They think that it will be utilized. And third thing is the travel. They arrange in such a way, a lot of traveling, airfare, car renting, hotel rent, huge. And it survived only a few years and it finished. And there a lot of people in the management and people, they are not utilized at all.
Right.
And also sometimes the technologically take a bad decision. They do not discuss on even level who really work, because top management obviously, and they ignore the people who work in the field.
Right. So I don't have an answer for all of
that's
that.
why when I do, these all the facts is in my mind,
Right.
that I would never allow to happen this.
Well, good, you learn from
Right.
other people's mistakes.
Yeah.
But that's why I say that the business plan is ever changing, right? You have to make sure that you're always looking at it, that you're changing it depending on what your goals are. Right now, your goals might just be, I want to get started. So what does my plan look like for me to do that? In 2 or 3 years, it may be, I'm looking for a brick and mortar. So who and what do I need to do to be able to find a location? Or who can connect me to maybe facade improvements from the city, or promise zone benefits or credits? The plan will always change. Did you have something, Diego?
Sorry, if I could, getting a little ahead of myself here, but I think that's a great point. One of the things we have to remember is that the business plan is not a document you write once and then put on the shelf and you check a box or pat yourself on the back. Every year you should be able to pull that out and revise it and look at it and say, hey, was last year's idea this year's idea, or should I change something? And I think one of the things that a lot of people get wrong is they write it once and then they forget about it, and then it becomes a little bit stale. So every year, revise, review, and if you can't do that, then you have to think about, is that plan actually useful for the company, right, or useful for the business? The plan has to be something that grows along with your business.
Thank you. Did somebody else have something?
Yeah, I did have a question. So you said that you have a restaurant,
Yeah.
and that you also are working a 9 to 5. I have trouble balancing my 9 to 5 and entrepreneurship activities, and so I wanted to ask the question: how long have you had the restaurant, and at what point do you plan on moving out of that?
So we've had the restaurant 3.5 years now, and I've been working in my 9 to 5 for 2 years, or 2.5 years. I honestly, part of my plan is probably not to leave my 9 to 5, because my husband and I have a partnership so that I'm supporting him, but he's the face of the restaurant. So that's another reason why business plans are so important, because what does your team look like? Who are the roles that everybody's going to be able to fill, and do they have the skill sets to do that? Now, ideally, do I really want to do both? Probably not. Some days I just want to beat somebody. But I know that he has certain skill sets that I don't, and he has certain skill sets that, well, you know what I mean. So, I mean, I would never go in the kitchen and make anything. He would never be on social media and put together a marketing strategy, right? So I'll think about that too. Does it make sense? A lot of times we give up control and power when we have partners, and that's a scary thought, but you can't do it all by yourself. So you'll get to the point where you either will have to hire some of that out, or have part of your team be family, like in my case with my husband, that's able to fill some of those roles. I do think my personal suggestion is to have 6 months to a year worth of living expenses before you leave your 9 to 5, because you never know what happens. The first year and a half at the restaurant, I put in more money than I was making. So I had to give myself probably a $75,000 loan for the restaurant. Yes.
So before the restaurant actually opened, where did you go for like customer validation on whether your food was good?
So before the restaurant opened, we did a lot of customer validation with the Economic Development Center in O'Fallon, Missouri, because they had one. So they were able to help us with data, with information, with traffic in the areas that we were considering. The validation of the food was really something that we did mostly in-house and with a group of people that understood the restaurant industry. So we brought together a couple of people that we knew that own restaurants to see what has worked for you. I mean, the reality is O'Fallon is not Mexico. So when we first introduced the tongue street tacos, they did not go over very well, right? First of all, we changed the way we serve tacos, because tacos in Mexico are corn tortillas, whatever you put on it, and cilantro and onions. We don't put any cheese, we don't put any lettuce, we don't put any of that, and we don't use a flour tortilla. So we knew some things that we wanted to have there just to make it that nostalgic experience, that cultural piece. But we also did a lot of research to say, what do most Americans consider or like in Mexican food? And that was what we worked with some of the other restaurant owners of what works. Chimichangas, quesadillas, must-haves. Are they part of our normal diet? No. But we have to understand the market that we're serving. Does that make sense?
Yeah, is there if I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
So, my father, he wanted to open up a Bosnian restaurant here in St. Louis, but some of the Bosnian food's kind of like inconvenient to eat. And so, did you take the Mexican food that you were eating back home and you kind of Americanized it, made it convenient, or is it still the same authentic food? And like you said that some people wouldn't consider your food authentic. Did you change the food from how it was back home, or?
No, we have to have really thick skin. I hate Yelp. So, I mean, for us, it was important. There were some things that we knew we wanted on the menu because we want to be different, right? What's going to differentiate us from all the other Mexican restaurants? Well, we wanted to have traditional foods like tongue tacos, which are my favorite. But initially, we had to sell people on that idea, right? So we decided that there were going to be key dishes that we were not going to change, because we also know that there's a growing Hispanic population in St. Charles. So we knew the area, and our family is here, so we knew that they were going to be also supported for those dishes. But the reality was that 75% of our customers are Americans from the St. Charles area. So we did have to make those modifications by using more traditional Americanized Mexican foods. Not everybody's going to love everything. Now, through the years, we've started to introduce more of our traditional foods like the molcajete or the carnitas en salsa verde or different types of food, but it's because we now have a relationship with some of the customers to say, hey, you trusted me on the tongue tacos, taste this, you're going to love it. That was not something that we could have done initially. And I mean, I do a lot of stuff in the restaurant industry. I feel like there is a big need for more ethnic restaurants, but it is a process of getting the community to get to know you and to check you out and accept you, because initially they're not. We don't know Bosnian food necessarily, right? So you have to educate us, and that's what we had to do a lot. We had to do a lot of education on social media, on Facebook. We had to do a lot of videos just to try to explain to people, you know, what things were, and gave out a lot of free samples. Mark?
Is the research different? Like when you were looking at Mexican food offerings in O'Fallon, is that significantly different than what you would have experienced if you'd been looking, say, in Chicago, where there's a much, much larger and much longer established Hispanic community?
Oh, definitely, because our customer base would have been different. right? Our main customer base, if we were in Pilsen and Chicago, would be mostly people that eat the food every single day. So we would be able to offer the more traditional foods. And another thing that you have to keep in mind is when you do the research, you want to look at national and regional trends, but you also want to look at what's happening at the local level. I had one restaurateur who did a lot of research in Chicago, and so she based her menu and her prices on the taquerias in Chicago. So what happened was that she's selling tacos for $1.50. She's undercutting all the rest of us because our tacos start at $2.75. But when we went through and did her menu costing, she was losing money on every taco. But the research she did, so there's also wrong research, the research she did was, well, tacos should be $1.50. Yeah, but that's in Chicago where it's a taco stand or a taco place every other store, right? And you also have to look at your costs. So when we went through that, which is another, it's like a business plan for your menu, was to go through each recipe and find out how much does it cost for me to make this dish? Like for every ounce of garlic and every pinch of salt and every cup of tomato sauce. Like that's time consuming. But if you don't know that, then you don't know, you're basically just selling stuff at a random price. So until we did that with her, she was able to realize that, you know, it was costing her about $1.85 to make each taco. So if she's selling it at $1.50, she's not making any money. Yes.
So you said that when your daughter wanted to pitch the food truck idea, that you didn't really like that. What's your objection to food trucks?
No, my objection was not to the food trucks. My objection was to her projection that she would make the $50,000 profit.
Okay. But food trucks are the way to
Well,
go.
food trucks are growing, but you have to think about, okay, so when you have a brick and mortar, you have different things to think about than if you have a food truck. You can't just show up right here and say, here's my food truck.
Right.
So what licenses do you need? Now you need a license for every city that you go to. Right? What does it cost me? Is Christy gonna charge me $10 to be outside, or is she gonna charge me $1,000? Because now that
They
means
require you to plug into my electric
Right.
and not let you use a loud generator. And is
right.
that for-
So there's a
you
lot
have
of
to
rules
generate.
around that.
Right.
So that's where the research comes back in, right? Find out. So let's say you decide to start a food truck just so that you don't have the overhead. Think about where will you start, and maybe find out what the rules are or what the commissary in that area says that are the licenses that you have, the certifications that you have to have, what kind of insurance do you have to have. And I don't know, Diego, do you know more about food trucks?
I think you guys are covering the major topics. Think about, where are you going to park the food truck when you're not using it? A lot of people forget that at the end of the day, you're going to take that home, and a lot of neighborhoods have restrictions around larger than sort of, individual use vehicles. And then where are you going to actually do business? So everybody thinks, oh, I'm going to drive my food truck to Food Truck Friday in Tower Grove Park, and it's going to be awesome. Well, they have a set limit, and you've got to sign up, and you've got to be on a roster. And so that's one of the places where you make the most money, one would assume. But getting into that sort of circuit can take time and can be difficult, right? So you can't just go up on, South Grand, for example, or down in the Central West End and park in front of somebody's brick and mortar restaurant and open your food truck, because that's sort of unfair competition. So there are a lot of things to think about when you're thinking about a food truck business that are different than brick and mortar, which makes it, I would say, almost as complex as a brick and mortar. What's different is that the cost of entry is lower, and so it seems more appealing. But when you really think it through, you've got just as many questions on whether it's going to be successful as you would if you were going to do just traditional brick and mortar.
If you are thinking about a Bosnian food, I would definitely reach out to Diego and the people at the International Institute, because they do a phenomenal job with all the businesses that they've helped on Grand. I mean, we can help too, but they really have not just the resources, but also micro-lending if you needed to do that.
Awesome.
Any other business plan related questions?
Yes. The restaurant industry kind of took over. Anything else that I can help you guys with, just let me know. My contact information is here. I'd love to be a part of any questions that you have, or even if you need to be introduced to a specific person, if you're in a certain industry and you haven't been able to make any headway in your research, let me know, and I will do the best that I can to connect you to that person.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.